You are an executive broker with the Insurance Pro Insurance, which is the leading home inspection insurance provider in the nation. Brianne is a certified insurance counselor, a highly regarded designation that takes years of training and experience to achieve. She focuses on helping inspectors like us to understand their policies and how they can manage their risk, including ways to better protect their assets and avoid claims. And prior to joining Inspector Pro, Brianne's career included employment with lumber and construction companies. And I just find it interesting. She has a large family, and obviously they are very active with their various athletic events. So, Brianne, thank you for coming and sharing with us for the next 2 hours your great topic of interest. I shared with the guys and the gal earlier today that I attended a similar session that you all did at Inspection World a couple years ago, and just found it very good, especially with the case study. So with that, I turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate this opportunity, you guys. So what we're going to go over is inspection agreements and how they can protect your business. So first thing, this is my family. Before we jump into everything, as was mentioned, I have quite a large family. We're blended. I've got 6 kids, 4 teenage boys, all of whom play competitive baseball, a kindergartner and a 2-year-old. 2-year-old's our baby girl, and oh, she runs our house, I'll tell you what. So that's it in a nutshell about me. We're just going to jump right in. We've got a lot of material to cover. Obviously, this is a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. Don't make any legal decisions without consulting your legal counsel first. And so what we're going to cover in this presentation. So our main points, I'm going to go over some insurance basics with you. I'm also going to go over some important clauses that need to be in your inspection agreement. We've got a limitation of liability, the scope of services provided, your statute of limitations. Can you guys see my screen?
No, yes. We cannot. Oh, you can?
Oh, actually, no. I thought I was looking at it. Do you see the green share screen button at the bottom?
Let's see.
Just sort of hover over the bottom section of your screen.
If you're in full view, Brianne, you won't see it.
Oh, okay.
Can you see it now?
No, not yet.
How about now?
Okay, here we go. Now we're on.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I have to just show a picture of my cute family.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. This happened to be right after a birthday. We have a tradition of after birthdays, we get in a cake fight, and this is the result of that. Okay, so back to insurance basics. We're going to go to insurance basics. We're going to go over important clauses in the inspection, the limitation of liability, the scope of services you're going to provide, statute of limitations, dispute resolutions, a clause called reliance by third party. And then finally, if you are with Inspector Pro, we are going to go over some deductible discounts that you're going to get. Okay, let's see. So insurance basics. So obviously your policy is a contract between you and your carrier. You agree to certain terms to follow, and so does your insurance carrier. It's a two-way street. So who is an insured? You are obviously an insured. When you get into partnerships and limited liabilities or LLCs and corporations, other people are also considered insured in regards to spouses, members of your LLC, people like that. Your employees are also an insured. Here's just an example from our policy where you can find the named insured. Obviously, it's pretty simple. It's right at the top. In order to have coverage, there are some qualifications that you have got to have. One, you need to have the inspection agreement, and you need to have it signed prior. And the inspection agreement needs to have your business name, or if you're a sole proprietor, your DBA or your name on it. You have to issue an inspection report. And that also needs to have your business name as well. and any, or if you're a sole proprietor, your name. And then lastly, your business entity needs to collect the payment. Now, that doesn't mean you as the owner has to take it. It can be one of your employees, as long as someone from your company has taken payment. So typically, inspector policies, the E&O and general liability policies will only cover inspection services. So if you're doing things on the side like construction, anything like that, you're not covered under this policy. So who is the inspection agreement between? Pretty simple. Obviously, it's between you and your client, which should be on your inspection agreement somewhere. You've got the name of your client and the name of who's doing the inspection. The policy, our policy, now all these examples I'm going to give are from our policy. If you have insurance elsewhere, read your policy and see how they define things. But our policy defines an inspection agreement as a written contract between your client for whom you are performing inspection services. Let's see. Okay, so here are Virginia standards of practice. This is what has got to be in your agreement at a minimum. Your contract has to have your name on there. It's got to have your license number, name of clients. It's got to have the physical address of the property, the cost of your home inspection, and everything that you are going to inspect. And then I found out, it was new to me, that you have to have a statement in there that the home inspection does not include a review for compliance with regulatory requirements. So who can sign the inspection agreement? This is a question we get all of the time. Your client or someone authorized to sign on behalf of your client, someone who has power of attorney, can sign. We always recommend to get your client to sign it. It means if there's a married couple, one person in that couple needs to sign it. Do we have questions?
Yes, we've been told, or at least in some of the CE classes we've been taking, that the real estate agent is authorized to sign the contract if the client is not able to. Is that true?
We will accept a signature from a real estate agent. We don't like that way, but we will accept it. We prefer, obviously, the client signs it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because since we were told that, I have had a few agents sign the contract, so I just wanted to make sure I was covered on that.
You're good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm sure this has been hammered into your head all day today. When does the inspection agreement need to be signed? It is part of your policy, at least our policy, and most of the other big carriers out there, whether you're with me or one of our competitors, every one of us has the requirement that that agreement has to be signed before you do your inspection. Absolute must. So some of you may not know why we require this, but this is why. So this is to avoid the inspection agreement being considered a contract of adhesion. And again, your insurance policy requires it. So a contract of adhesion is when you're put in a take it or leave it position, and maybe your client doesn't have the chance to ask you questions or go over the contract with you, and you've already done your inspection and that agreement wasn't signed. Now they feel forced to sign it because you've already provided your service. And courts really frown upon that because they feel like clients need to have that time to ask questions and go over everything with you to make sure that they understand everything. Okay, we get a lot of objections to getting the inspection agreement signed. And the inspection industry gets a lot of objections to getting this inspection agreement signed. We get a lot of, well, my client's out of town, they're not going to be there. We get, my client is elderly, or we get, my real estate agent says there's not enough time to sign that inspection agreement before that inspection. Always sign it, have it signed prior, come up with different ways that they can get it signed. There's plenty of programs out there like DocuSign where you can have it signed electronically. things like that. Just make sure it is signed prior. And have that conversation with them. You can even say, hey, my insurance policy requires this. My carrier requires this. I can't do your inspection without this signature. So keys to overcoming those objections. Again, just be prepared, kind of have in your head a list of what they might say if you're trying to get them to sign that inspection agreement prior. Maybe create a script so you know and practice it with other people so you know when you're put in that situation, you're comfortable in what you say. And then always keep a good perspective. Remember that objections are actually a good thing. It gives you that chance to communicate. And if you're communicating with your client, you're building a good rapport and you want that relationship because obviously you're going to want future business or referrals. Questions?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify on the timing that the inspection agreement is signed. Anyone that works with me has the opportunity immediately when they get scheduled, they get a text and an email with a link to sign the agreement, and they're asked to sign the agreement at least twice before the inspection. Inevitably, I still have people that don't sign it, but they can't get their report. They can't access the report without a signature. I won't release it. So in some cases, people's inspection agreements are signed after I've performed the work. Is there an issue there?
Yes, it's got to be signed prior. I know a lot of people in the past have been, well, they can't get the report until the agreement's signed. It's got to be signed prior. And I always say, and I know some of you guys might huff and puff and maybe roll your eyes a little bit, but walk away from that inspection if it's not signed before. It's always easier to lose out on a $400, $500 inspection, whatever you're charging, than it is to potentially have a claim that's thousands and thousands of dollars, that's not going to be covered by the carrier because you did not get that inspection agreement signed prior. I have seen it happen. I have seen inspectors end up with $40,000, $50,000 in claims that aren't covered because they didn't get that agreement signed. It could potentially put someone out of business if it's a big enough claim, right? So always get it signed prior. If you get a claim and you say, well, it was signed before we issued the report, 9 times out of 10, the carrier is going to come back and say, sorry, we're not going to cover your claim.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we're going to go over some inspection agreement scenarios. Here's scenario 1. He claimed he didn't sign the agreement. So we had a client that reached out to the inspector calling the home inspection. It was a disaster. He had a roofer come look at it, and within 30 seconds of looking at it, he said, hey, your roof, there's no way this would have worked. Your inspector, of course, inspectors, as we know, are always the first one that gets thrown under the bus. Of course, the inspector should have caught this. The client came in and wanted 2 things from the inspector. He wanted a refund of the inspection fee, and then wanted to understand how they could file a claim against the insurance for the missed defects. So what happened next? Our policies, our claims department, our pre-claims department issued a denial of liability. And of course, the claimant didn't agree with our stance and they appealed it, which they have the right to appeal if the carrier issues a declination of liability. In that liability, we said that the inspection agreement was, or in there we said the inspector was not liable. The claimant came back and said, well, we didn't sign the inspection agreement, so you can't limit our liability to the inspection fee, which I think was like $385. So now the claimant's demanding a refund of the inspection fee of $385 and wants the costs to replace the roof, which was $8,700. So your total demand now is $9,075. So here's the inspection agreement. We can see it was signed. We have the date it was signed. Here's some pictures from the roof. The inspector walked the roof. He made comments on the roof. He noted it as repair or replace and went into some more detail. Here's the best part. We have a picture of the client signing the inspection agreement. So I'm not saying you guys need to take pictures every time you have your inspection agreement signed, but in this case, he just happened to take one and it worked. Picture's worth 1,000 words. So again, our claims department found the inspection agreement was in fact signed prior, and roof deficiencies were noted in the inspection report. So we reissued the declination of liability, which is a letter that just says, hey, our inspector is not liable. These are the reasons why. We closed the claim and nothing was paid out to the claimant, not even refunding the inspection fee. He didn't have to do anything. Questions?
Yeah, in that photo, it looked like he was signing the agreement at the beginning of the home inspection.
Correct.
That's sort of like, oh, if he was presented at them, then he's going to count. It wouldn't he then counter with he didn't have time to really review it, because we want to do this in advance before that.
Sure. Obviously, we want to get it signed, 2 days, a week before, whatever. But if you're there and it's not signed and you don't start that inspection until it's signed, that means you're in their kitchen and they sign the inspection agreement before you start. That counts. Obviously, maybe if you're in that scenario, ask them if they have any questions, initiate that conversation just to double check to see if they have any questions about that agreement. Does that answer your question, Mark?
I was just pointing something out. It wasn't a question. Do you
Okay.
want me to share what I do since I use Inspector Pro?
Why don't we do that, Mark, at the end? We've got a lot of stuff to
Just
get
remind
through.
me and I'll be glad to share it.
Sure, absolutely.
Makes it simple.
Maybe a couple other questions here. Tyler, I see your hand up.
Yeah, backing up a little to the Adhesion Act. We always reach out to the client as quickly as we know, but sometimes, as we all know, it's short notice on getting some things going. And I've had clients that were kind of in that window where they need to get this booked, but he balked at the contract, which my insurance agents have reviewed and approved, and he wanted changes made to it. And I informed him it wasn't possible and that we wouldn't be able to help him. He went ahead and did the inspection, but would that qualify as an adhesion contract where he was pushed for time and we're in a, well, take it or leave it situation?
No, because he signed it before and you were very clear. He wanted to make changes to the contract. You said that wasn't possible. So he understood that and agreed to it prior to the inspection. So at that point, it's not a contract of adhesion. Now, I will say, if you've got a client that is wanting to change your contract, walk away from that inspection. It's not worth it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Just a minute, Chris Kyrgos, if I said that right, could you mute yourself? There's a lot of background noise coming through. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, moving forward.
Yes, I have.
Oh,
I have one. Vicky
okay.
McConnell is since sometimes we send a contract out to get approval when perhaps the client is out of state, out of the country or something. Is an electronic email with their approval of the agreement satisfactory for a signature?
Yes, if you can't get an electronic signature and they can respond to an email, they can just say, yes, I agree to all the terms and conditions in your contract, sign their and type their name. We will accept that. We don't like doing it that way, but if that's a last resort, that's what we've got to do. But you need something
Great,
that's
thank you.
okay, perfect.
All right, thank you. Claim scenario 2.
Perfect. So claim scenario 2 is you didn't tell me I had faulty plumbing. So this homeowner alleged that the home inspector didn't identify the presence of plumbing leaks and failed plumbing piping. Their demand was $9,795. Oops. Hold on. Sorry, guys, trying to get there we go. So here's the inspection agreement. It was signed on October 29th, 2019. Here's what we've got from the inspection report. Inspection was done October 28th, 2019. So the inspection was done the day before, or the inspection agreement, or the inspection was done the day before the agreement was signed. Sorry, guys, getting a little tongue-tied here. As a result, the insurance carrier denied coverage, and because they didn't have a signed inspection agreement. At that point, the inspector was on his own to hire attorneys and pay out any expenses or settlement costs that would occur. So key takeaways, again, get your inspection agreement signed prior. Offer multiple solutions to get it signed. DocuSign. They can email it over to the client. Let them print it out. They can sign it, scan it back, email it back. There's a bunch of options that they have. And again, it's always better to lose out on your inspection fee than it is to lose potentially thousands and thousands of dollars because you didn't get that agreement signed and you end up with a claim. So why do claims get denied? Top reasons claims get denied. One, the very top one is you don't get that inspection agreement signed prior. Two is you fail to report the claim in a timely manner. So I always say the minute you know of anything, call your insurance provider. Call me if you're with me. We can get it submitted as a pre-claim. That way, if it does blow up into something, the carrier can't come back and say, hey, you knew that about this 6 months ago and you didn't tell me. And if that happens, more often than not, the claim gets denied. And again, the third reason for claims being denied is not having the proper endorsements for additional services you are providing. Any questions on this?
This is Scott. This is Scott, if I can go.
Sure.
Yes.
So when they execute the inspection agreement, I believe it has a date, but not necessarily a time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true?
The inspection agreement?
So my point is, let's say that the client arrives midstream in the inspection,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't have the inspection agreement signed, but we have it signed during the inspection or possibly just following the inspection. Is it still valid that it's on the same day?
No,
Or-
it's not valid. It's got to be, if the inspection is on the same day, that's fine, but that agreement has to be signed before.
Okay, and how does one determine if it was signed an hour after the inspection versus an hour before?
So if they're signing electronically, there's usually a timestamp that happens. It's in a bunch of code that usually can get pulled up. Your inspection software, if you're issuing agreements out of your inspection software, usually has a timestamp, and we
Okay.
can.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Dylan, your hand's up. Did you have a question or comment? No.
Okay.
And Remy, your hand's up. Do you have a question or comment?
No, that's a false hand. I'll lower it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right. So the first thing we're going to get into that needs to be in your inspection agreement is a limitation of liability. So what is the limitation of liability? It is a contractual provision that limits the amount of liability that you assume when you are brought into a claim or someone has a potential claim against you. There are some jurisdictions that won't allow you to have limitation of liability. I believe Massachusetts is one of those states. I think Wisconsin is another one. But I believe Virginia, you can have a limitation of liability. And a lot of these limitations are, you'll see, they limit it to the inspection fee. Some do 2 times the inspection fee. I've seen some go to 3 times the inspection fee. Kind of just depends on what you want in there. So the limitation of liability clause in your agreement should be clear. It should be unambiguous. It needs to be unmistakable, and it needs to be conspicuous, which means it needs to stick out in the agreement. They need to know that, hey, this is something important that I need to pay attention to. So in our agreement, the limitation of liability clause looks like this. We have bolded, it's actually outlined. and it sticks out in the agreement. So again, some states don't uphold it. Why don't they uphold it? It's either against a state statute or they determine that the limitation of liability is against public policy. Do we have any questions at this point? We're kind of going through things super fast. Okay, so another thing to be included in your inspection agreement is the scope of services to be provided. Set your expectations for your client. You're not magic. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't see through walls. Set that expectation. Communicate that with them. Let them know what services you are performing. What are you including with your inspection? Are you doing a mold inspection? Are you doing a pool and spa? Are you doing termite, septic, anything like that? Make sure they know what you are inspecting and what you're not inspecting for. Communicate with your client. Take 5 minutes before you start your inspection. Explain the inspection agreement. Explain that it's just a visual inspection and that you're not moving things. You're not moving furniture, anything that's blocked. You're not moving things out of the way. Discuss what is not included in the inspection. Tell them that it's a snapshot in time. Also reiterate that the report needs to be read in its entirety. A lot of homeowners will just read that summary and they don't read that whole inspection report. So just make sure they understand they need to read that report in its entirety. And then, of course, after the inspection, maybe do a walkthrough with them, discuss any concerns that your client may have, and ask them questions, solicit that conversation. It's important for them to understand and to feel comfortable, right? They hired you to do a job and they want to feel comfortable. So solicit those questions, make sure they're comfortable with the inspection before you leave. Here's a sample of a scope of inspection. It's pretty long. It says it's a non-invasive visual inspection. We're not moving anything. It also references, this is a Virginia inspection agreement. It references the Virginia Administrative Code, what standards of practice you're going to use. It says that you're going to provide a written report that's for the sole use and benefit of the client. The written report shall document any deficiencies. So you're going to go through and you're going to make sure they are aware of all the deficiencies that you saw. And then again, just put a disclaimer in there that your opinion, this inspection report is based on your opinion, and it shouldn't be construed as advice to the client to purchase or not to purchase the home. So here's our third claim scenario, which is you can see hidden issues, right? So what happened? So the plumbing system backed up that was due to a root clog, and it had been growing for many years. There was a hole in the bottom of the oven, and this is all coming from the complaint from the client. We pulled this from their letter that came from the client. The oven had a hole in the bottom, which was hidden by tinfoil. That the HVAC system as a whole was well below acceptable standards. And there were items that were placed over said water damage prior to the sale to hide the damage from the clients. And they provided photographs for all of this. Claimant is demanding $11,467.12. So from our inspector's inspection agreement in the scope of work, he said that any area which is not exposed to view, it's concealed or is inaccessible, and it goes on by soils, walls, floors, etc. Those areas or items which have been excluded is not included in this inspection. So it just reiterated that we're not moving anything. If they're blocked, we're not gonna move. If it's covered, we're not gonna move a rug, things like that. He also had a limitation of liability clause, which said his liability is equal to the sum of the inspection fee. So he's only willing to give up the inspection fee. Here's some pictures. This is the stove and the oven. At the bottom right there, you can see the tin foil. So obviously the inspector is not going to move that tin foil. That hole was underneath the tin foil, so the inspector is not going to see it. In the report, it said that they inspected the HVAC. They operated it in cooling mode, but they didn't operate it, the heating system, because it was in cooling mode. So they didn't operate the heating system. Here's just more on the air source. And they had pictures of the temperatures when they tested everything. So what happens next? So we wrote a response, and when I say we, I mean our claims department wrote a response that said the home inspector operated the HVAC systems. It was noted in his report. We had pictures of the supply and return air temperatures, and that they were operational and cooling air at the time of the inspection. They went on to say that the heating mode was not inspected. We also included in our letter that the inspection doesn't identify concealed conditions. Again, you're not required to move personal property during your inspection. So the water damage that they're complaining about was concealed from the inspector. As far as the oven goes, it was tested. There were no issues found. Again, we reiterated that the hole at the bottom was covered by tin foil. It would be considered a concealed condition. So we said, your claims are without merit. The maximum that you are entitled to at this point is equal to the sum of the inspection fee. So after we issued that denial of liability letter, and the insured refunded the claimant the inspection fee of $350. He decided to do this because he wanted to keep good terms. He was afraid that they would, maybe badmouth them on social media, things like that. So he decided to return that inspection fee of $350. So key takeaways: take pictures, take a lot of pictures. You don't have to include all of the pictures you take in your inspection report, but keep them. Save digital copies of them. Save your inspection reports. Save your agreements. We suggest you hold on to these things for a minimum of 5 years. Do we have any questions at this point? Perfect.
Well, actually, I do
Okay.
have one. Just as I'm listening to all this and the need for us to protect ourselves, one of the things that I've seen kind of start to be presented to inspectors are the use of body cameras. Is that any observation or opinion on that?
Do it. Absolutely. If you've got a body camera, that's even more footage that we have, because it may pick up something that you may not see, right? So if we've got that footage, great. Now you may run into a problem where maybe the homeowner or the buyer, the potential buyer, doesn't want to be on video. You may have to address that, and if they're not comfortable with it, you may not be able to use it. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, does anybody use a body camera, and what's been your experience?
So I have not had a claim. I know I've got inspectors that use a body camera. I have yet to see a claim come in from an inspection that a body camera was used. Now, I'm not saying that means there's not going to be a claim if you use a body camera. We just haven't had an experience with one yet, because it's fairly new.
Okay.
Hey, Alice, do you have to have additional insurance? Ms. Smith, do you have to have additional insurance to use a body camera?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Ask questions.
What
I
are
do
the
see,
legal ramifications of having a body camera in an occupied house? Does the homeowner have to sign off on that, saying that you're going to walk around and film everything, or what?
It's my understanding. Now, again, it may be different in your state. I would say check with a local attorney, but from what I understand, as long as you can get the homeowner to agree to it, you're good. I don't at this point know that you need anything in writing with their signature saying that they agree for you to use a body camera in their home. Again, check with a local attorney on that.
All right.
We have a question on here from Ray McMurdy. Can you talk about any claims with the use of drones?
I have yet to see a claim that has been caused by a drone, or if you're using a drone for like a roof. I haven't seen a claim come in. Let me think. We've used footage from a drone, but not specifically from like either a drone damaged property or ran into somebody, but we've used the footage from the drone that the inspector used to inspect the roof. Does that answer your question?
Ray, you want to make a comment? I think he's probably just looking for a general comment.
Okay.
Actually,
Here, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, basically my concern is that I mean, I've thought about using drones, but then also, and you know, the other side, my concern is that people kind of overvalue how clear or how much you can or can't see with the drone. And so it's kind of, I was just curious any input that you may have, because I've kind of gone back and forth with my head about, you know, the thoughts of using one versus not using one.
Sure. Again, it's a business decision. We recommend both. If you can get, if one or the other, we don't have a preference really. If you're going to use a drone, that's great. If you can walk the roof, walk the roof. If you feel like you don't want to walk the roof, then at least maybe consider using a drone to inspect that roof.
All right. Going back a little bit, there was a question that was posted about using, I'll just read it. How about signature by capturing the IP? What is your take on that? I don't know what an IP is.
So if they're doing an electronic signature, usually like if they're using DocuSign, it automatically tracks the IP address it came from.
Oh, I see.
So usually if you're doing an electronic signature, yes, it'll have that IP address on there, and that's helpful for us if they're claiming they didn't sign it before. Did I understand your question correctly?
I think that probably yes, answers what they were looking for, and IP would be the internet provider. I
Yep.
just realized. Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, actually, the response was yes.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? All right. Let's go into the statute of limitations. So the statute of limitations is the time your client has to initiate action. So the time they have to file a complaint or make a claim. Statute of limitations, again, vary by jurisdictions. Some states may have a 1 year, some states may have a 5 year. I've seen some states that have a 7 years, that has 7 years statute of limitation, but you can reduce that by contract. For Virginia, we are recommending a 2-year statute of limitations. And that's kind of what it looks like in the inspection agreement. It's very clear, time to initiate action. In this contract, this is a 1-year one. So for Virginia, we would want 2 years, but this one, it's bolded so they can see it. It sticks out that they've got 1 year to bring a claim or a complaint.
And why 2 years in Virginia?
I think more often than not, we found in Virginia that if there's just a 1 year, the courts haven't been too keen on upholding that statute of limitations. We found that if there's been a 2 year in the state of Virginia, they have upheld those more. I couldn't find a case that set precedence on it, but I know we've had a couple where they've upheld that 2 year statute of limitations. So here's claim scenario 7, fire damage found too late. So the homeowners claim that the inspector failed to identify significant fire damage that existed in the home in 2017. The demand is $75,000. So here's from the inspection agreement. They've got a limitation of liability to the fee paid right there. And then they've got a statute of limitations clause. They have 1 year to bring from the date of the inspection to bring a complaint or a claim. So here's from the inspection report. I don't know about you, but that looks like fire damage to me. And it was noted in the report, there was evidence of a fire. It's right there. He recommended that the appropriate specialist evaluates that attic. So our claims department found the time to pursue damages out of a home inspection had expired. I believe, so the home was inspected in 2017. I believe this claim came to us in 2019. So 2 years later, and the statute of limitation in that inspection agreement was 1 year. Inspector refunded the inspection fee of $495. Did he have to do that? No, but he just did it as good faith. He wanted to keep that relationship either with the realtor. I believe it was with the realtor. So he did refund the claimant that $495 inspection fee. So again, that claim was $11,000, right? He did everything he should have. He got the agreement signed prior. He had the right clauses in his report or in his agreement. We were able to get him out of it, and he ended up out of pocket the $425. So here's the next clause we're going to talk about. It's dispute resolutions. So lawsuits are like Frankenstein's monster, right? Once they're created, you have no control over the outcome. It gets expensive. There's attorneys involved. It can be a nightmare for some people. So what is our dispute resolution preference? And again, this is if you are with Inspector Pro. So this is Inspector Pro's dispute resolution preference. Obviously, we want to go the pre-claims route. And pre-claims is a program that we have that if you have any type of complaint, anything like that, you let us know. We call it into pre-claims and they get in touch with you and they help you navigate through that situation. They will help you write a letter. They will do what they need to do, tell you what to say to get out of that claim. We have had tremendous success with the pre-claims department. We are able to it's been about 80% of complaints we've been able to shut down before they actually turn into a claim. I believe Scott Harvey has used our pre-claims assistance program, and I think he's had some really good success with it. Feel free to ask him any questions about that, his experience. I'm sure he would love to give you his perspective on that.
Hey, Brianne. Yeah, absolutely, folks. For those of you who are maybe entertaining a change in insurance, this piece of the pie is worth more than you can imagine. So they provide excellent counseling on how to approach the complaint and guide you along the way to help avoid it going to the next level, which none of us wants that to happen.
Does anyone have any questions on that process, what that looks like?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So I also subscribe to like a retainer kind of service through Joe Ferry. I'm sure everybody's heard of that name before. He had a little newsletter thing that came out, and he said, in your agreement, never have anything about arbitration, because arbitration always ends up where it's kind of a 50-50. So everybody's happy. The arbitrator is trying to make everybody happy. So what is the experience of you and your company with regard to arbitration versus, having something determined by a judge?
Sure. So obviously I don't know exact statistics on that. However, I will say that attorneys will always tell you not to have an arbitration clause in your agreement. Why? Because you give them more money to fight it for you. They get more money, right? It's been my experience in the claims that I've been a part of that arbitration is never always just a 50-50 go for the client and for the inspector. They listen to things. I've had it where, and I'll show you an example of this. I've had it where the arbitrator actually awarded the inspector thousands of dollars, and the plaintiff had to pay that, and the claimant had to pay that. So I've seen arbitration work. I've had better experience with arbitration than not. Let's just say that. And typically, arbitration, you're going to come out less expensive than you will if you go to court, because if you go to court, you've got your lawyer fees and everything else, the cost to file motions, all that crap that you have to do. It gets expensive, you know? So, and an arbitration, you pay your arbitration fee and that's it. And an arbitrator, it's binding. So once they've made that decision, it's final. Does that answer your question, Alex?
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. Do we have any other questions? Okay. So obviously after small claims, the next step we would recommend is small claims. Now, if you're with us, our pre-claims people will prepare you for small claims. Sometimes we send people out there with you. Sometimes we don't. It just kind of depends on the situation. But we prepare you for that. And we'd always rather go to small claims first before we go to arbitration, because typically small claims, we can get out of it for pretty inexpensive, right? And I believe small claims, at least in most states, is anything less than $10,000, I believe. So, and then if you don't do small, oh, go ahead. We have questions.
No.
Yeah, I was just asking, when you're doing contracts, or should you do contracts for, say, when you do a pre-drywall inspection?
If you want coverage, are you saying you're doing that for like a home builder, correct?
Correct. Like when somebody's building a house,
Yep.
and like a brand new house, and they just want somebody to come in and do a pre-drywall, because it's not, from what I've seen, it's not as, I guess, regulated. So it's kind of a gray area from
Sure.
everything I've seen.
Sure. So what I would recommend, you can absolutely do those. Make sure that there's at least some kind of contract in place between you and the builder. You don't need to do a contract for every job that you're doing. You can do a blanket contract for the entire year or for that project, whatever it is. Just make sure you have some kind of agreement in place.
And what if that's just it? The homeowner, the person who's buying it from the builder, is paying me to do that.
To do the drywall inspection?
Right, pre-drywall, right.
Yep, then have that agreement with whoever's hiring you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, so lastly, our last step we would take is we would, if pre-claims fails, we can't get you out of it, small claims doesn't work, and you have an arbitration clause in your contract, we say go to arbitration. Again, like I was explaining to Alex, it's much cheaper to go through arbitration than it is to go to court and fight it through the legal system like that. So here's what we've got in our agreement. We choose, it says exactly what we want. So it shall be as resolved through small claims court. If in the event the amount exceeds the jurisdiction of the small claims court, then it shall be settled by binding arbitration. And we go on to name a company that we like to use. We do construction dispute resolution services, or if they're not available, we use Resolute Systems. But we always try to go through construction dispute resolution services. The reason being is we've had a lot of success with them, not saying that they're biased in any way, but they're just really good at balancing everything out and making good decisions. Now, we have had a couple, you know, that they've made a decision and we've kind of gone, that makes sense, but it is what it is. But we have really good success. Questions?
Where is this out of your agreement, this resolution of disputes?
Yes, we'll get to that in a
agreement.
little bit. I've got a model agreement for Virginia.
Okay.
So here's a claim scenario. We've got Chinese drywall. So the claimant alleges that the inspector did not identify it and is seeking damages of $301,000. So the claimant happens to be a house flipper, and the inspector performed the initial inspection in 2016. At that time, obviously, there was no evidence of it. The inspector for that same client performed a second inspection on that same house in 2018. In 2018, the claimant called and said the potential buyer had found indications that there might be evidence of the Chinese drywall and asked that further testing was done. There was black discoloration that was noticed on the electrical connectors on the plugs, and the inspector took drywall samples. The second floor came back negative, but the first floor had a positive test result. Here's from the inspector's inspection agreement. Again, it says that any controversy or claim, or at the top, he's got a limitation of liability to the fee paid. And he's also got a arbitration clause in there that any controversy or claim shall be submitted to binding arbitration through, and he used the same companies that we typically like, the Construction Dispute Resolution Services or Resolute Systems. And each party of the dispute will be responsible for their own costs. So the inspector is going to pay his arbitration cost, and the claimant's going to pay their arbitration cost. Here's some photos. Now, I'm not familiar with Chinese drywall all that much, but I'm being told that the black oxidization, I think I said that right, on the electrical piping, or right there, could be evidence that they've got Chinese drywall. So here is what happened next. Because the inspection agreement had that arbitration clause in it, the claim went directly to arbitration. This particular one, we couldn't do a pre-claim because there had been a written demand for money. And our policy, again, our policy with Inspector Pro defines a claim as a written demand for money. So if you get a claimant that either gives you're served with a lawsuit, or even in an email, they say, hey, I want you, I'm coming after you for $11,000, whatever that might be. That's a written demand for money. A written demand for money also is if they are requesting your insurance information. That is a written demand for money. So after this, the claim went to arbitration. The arbitrator ruled that the home inspector was not liable for non-discovery of patent or latent defects in materials. Chinese drywall is considered a defective material. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The arbitrator actually awarded the home inspector legal and other expenses, which was equal to $86,295.27, which was, in all honesty, that was our cost, the carrier's cost to defend him in this claim. Now, full transparency, inspector, you're not going to get the $86,000. That's going to go to the carrier to recoup those costs, right? But that, and honestly, for the arbitrator to award us money is very rare. That hardly ever happens. I know of 2 situations that's happened, and this is one of them, and this was the biggest amount. Do we have any questions?
See, Miller, your hand's up again.
Sorry.
All right, coming off. Mark, you raised your hand.
Yeah, Michelle. Brianna, would you please put the screen back up that had the clause that recommended qualifications of the arbitrator? I'd like to take a picture of my screen.
Sure. Oh, of the one that's in our agreement?
You talked about the 3 years home inspector related experience or something. Yeah, that one. Thank you. Got it. Thank you.
Perfect. Anything else? Okay.
Actually, I do have one question. So,
sure.
And this may be a little bit out of your purview, but so, and maybe some other inspectors would know. For example, my business is an LLC, and my understanding is that that separates it from personal financial interests of mine. Mm-hmm. And so, if I keep the assets or the bank account low, does that offer any protection in terms of somebody coming to sue me? And let's say that if I had $50,000 in there, you know, and it was an $80,000 lawsuit that I lost, would that be, would I be liable for up to that amount? Or if I drained it down and just had 5,000 in there, then even though they sued me for more, they couldn't get that. This may be more of a legal question, but
yeah, that's more of a legal question.
Yeah.
I don't have an exact answer for you on that. I will tell you that if you've got a claim and you have $500,000 limits, the insurance carrier is going to pay out. The maximum they're going to pay out is $500,000. Now that's everything. I don't know at that point if the homeowner can come back and sue you for additional. And I don't know as far as the balances you keep in your bank accounts. I don't have an answer for that.
all right.
Mark, do you have another question?
That might be
No, I
all.
just forgot to lower my hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the next clause we're going to go into is reliance by third parties. What is reliance? Go ahead.
Brianne, this is Scott.
Hi.
I'm just watching the text. There's a pretty good question in the text, and it said that do policyholders, i.e. somebody that goes with your company, and you'll probably address this later, they're just asking about whether they get free contracts or get contracts for them to use.
I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, so reliance by third parties. So this is a provision in your contract that to avoid others that are not party to the inspection agreement from being able to take action against you as the inspector. Our reliance clause says that it's for the agreement is solely for, and the report is for the client's use only in evaluating the physical condition of the property. If by an off chance someone else tries to file a claim that wasn't a party to that inspection, it says that the person will agree to the terms and conditions that were in the inspection agreement. So again, you would only have to pay out what was in your limitation of liability clause. If someone else tried to file a claim, that doesn't happen very often. I've seen it a couple of times, but we've been able to get out of them. Okay, so here we go. Here's Inspector Pro's inspection agreement. This is what it looks like. There's your client and the inspector name on there. Here's our scope of services provided. That's, again, everything that you're going to do, the standards you're going to use. Here is our limitation of liability clause right there. It's very noticeable. It's clear, it's unambiguous. It's right there for them to see. This is arguably one of the most important clauses to have in your inspection agreement. Your inspection agreement is your first line of defense when you have a claim. So we want it to be strong. If you have a weak one, it makes our job a lot harder to defend you in a claim. We have, oh, up here, I missed it. We've got the statute of limitations. We are actually offering, sorry, we're actually offering a comprehensive inspection. So this is what we have found. If you give the client, and this is just to make sure that the contract's not construed as a contract of adhesion. If you give your client an option for a comprehensive inspection, they can do so. At that point, you can walk away from the inspection. Comprehensive inspection requires like an engineer and an architect and all of these other people. It's going to cost a minimum of $2,500, and there's a separate contract for it. If you have a client that wants this, it's your option to say, okay, then you're going to need to find someone else to do and you're going to need to find someone else to do the inspection and walk away. I have yet to see a home inspector perform a comprehensive, bring in a comprehensive or do a comprehensive inspection. It's not worth it to them. It's not worth the liability. So they just walk away. The only reason we have this in a contract, again, is to make the client feel like they have a choice on what they're getting, whether they're getting a full home inspection or a comprehensive. It kind of it helps us get away from this being perceived as a contract of adhesion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Remy, do you have a question?
Trying to find the mute button here. Going back, I'm sorry, it goes back up 3 or 4 slides when you said about in there about the value of the home that an inspection has. It's part of the limitations. So if an inspector decides to participate in what we call cost to cure and provides either in their inspection report or an additional report telling the homeowner how much it may cost to fix various deficiencies and stuff, does that affect my coverage with you people?
I don't know that it will affect coverage. I've never had that happen. So that might be something I need to get with the underwriter. But it's my understanding home inspectors are not supposed to make any kind of determination as to the cost of what it will take to repair something. If you're giving them a cost, it opens you up to more liability, because what if you say, hey, this is going to take $1,500 to repair, and they find out, oh, it's going to take $5,000. Then they're going to come back and say, hey, my home inspector said it's only going to cost me $1,500 to repair. I want him to pay the difference. So it opens you up to quite a bit of liability there. So I say don't put estimates. Don't do estimates.
Brianne, this is Scott. I'm relatively new to the business. I've been in business 5 years, but there's others on the call that have been involved in the Richmond market for many, many years. And the RAR, Richmond Association of Realtors, is got it specified in their contracts that home inspectors must provide cost estimates for repairs. It's absurd,
Okay.
but there's no latitude.
Okay.
So maybe there needs to be some language addressing that requirement that's forced upon the home inspector in that particular market.
Yep. Will you shoot me an email, Scott, with that information? Because that's a question I need to go back
Yeah,
to.
I think it's required in Richmond and only Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah, Richmond is one of, from what I've been told, because I'm part of a national home inspection franchise, it's not the only market, but it's one of very few. And it's absurd. We're not contractors. We shouldn't be expected to provide that, but we have to, because, I do some inspections in Richmond, and if we don't have the cost per cure, the first phone call we get is from the agent, where's my cost per cure? But I'll be happy to send you the email, Brianne.
Doesn't Repair Pricer offer that service, and you would just their third party gets you out of the liability and offers the service, and you just charge extra for offering that?
I've tried that solution. It does not work as well as it sounds.
Okay.
Yeah. That to me, it does kind of push the monkey on the back of the company that's providing the quotes. So it might help reduce some of the liability for the home inspector, but it's just an ugly beast that exists that we have to deal with.
Okay. Yeah, Scott, shoot me that email, and I'll just get with the carrier and the underwriter. I'll reply back to you, and you can send it, I believe, to Remy, who had that question.
And Dylan just put a post, I just disclaim accuracy in my agreement and report, which I think is a wise thing to do.
Absolutely.
Mark, you have your hand up?
Yeah. This requirement by what? By the realtors in Richmond that are requiring this? Well, isn't this the kind of issue that Vari should go through and ask Rob's help in how to pursue this? It's not required by DPOR. We're licensed by DPOR. It seems like legislation should be introduced prohibiting the realtors from requiring the home inspectors to do something that the Commonwealth of Virginia does not require us to do. They shouldn't be allowed to require you to do that. Period. They should be prohibited from requiring or any home inspector they recommend to do estimates.
I agree. We're being strong-armed into doing it.
That's what we look to Vari for, to help us, not just to report back on what was what. We need more members to join, so Vari has more money. But it'd be nice if when we have these annual meetings, if we spend more than half an hour on Vari business, because we have to do this education just to get people to attend the meetings. There are plenty of things we should be talking about that we can use Vari that we ourselves established to service. I'm going to mute myself.
All right, Brianne, you want to carry on?
Sure. Okay, so the next clause we have, oh, hold on, let me go back. What's happening here? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. We've got, here's our resolution of disputes, which again is our arbitration clause. Again, we mentioned it should be resolved through small claims court. Obviously, if you can do pre-claims first, great. If it elevates to a claim, our first place to do is small claims court. If it's outside of the jurisdiction, then we're going to go to binding arbitration, which again, we use construction dispute resolution system or services and resolute systems. We have the time to initiate action, which is again, your statute of limitation. Again, this is not Virginia's. I believe in Virginia's, we have it as 2 years, but this particular state has a 1-year statute of limitation. So we put that in there. So it says, you know, obviously you've got 1 year from the date of inspection to file a claim. And then again, we have our reliance by third parties. You just understand that the inspection report is provided to the client and is solely for the use of the client. Then we have place for the client and the inspector to sign. Again, it's got to be signed prior. You are going to get so sick of me saying this. It has to be signed before you do before you start your inspection. So if it's not signed, when you get there, don't start walking the house. Someone could say that you're starting, don't walk the exterior, get it signed, wait in the car, do whatever you have to do, but don't start that inspection. So obviously our model agreement is long. A lot of inspectors like it to be on one page. Here's some reasons why our agreement is so long. A lot of legal documents are required to have margins of 1 inch. You've got to have a font size of 11. You need to have things bold and capitalized, and your limitation of liability. Everything's got to be clear, unambiguous, things like that. It's got to stick out. Your important clauses that you're going to use to fight, that we're going to use to defend you, need to be brought to the attention of the client. Bolding and making it so visible is so that client can't come to us and say, well, we didn't see that in the contract. It wasn't in there. We didn't read that. This just helps to bring those clauses to the attention of your client. Again, the inspection agreement needs to be clear and understandable. There are more important things that need to go in this inspection agreement than fitting it on one page. These clauses are more important than just the fact that you guys want to fit it on one page. So here we go with Inspector Pro's deductible discounts. Mark, do you have another question or did you forget to lower your hand?
Sorry, I remembered to mute myself, but I'll lower my hand.
Okay, so Inspector Pro's deductible discounts. So if you're with us and you use our model inspection agreement and you end up with a claim, you will get $1,000 off your deductible. Now, remember, if the agreement was signed prior, you have this. If it was signed after, you do not get this discount. We also have what's called an early reporting discount. That is, if you report any issue to us before it's a claim. So again, our policy defines a claim as a written demand for money. If you report it, these are typically what we call pre-claims, you will get 50% off your deductible. We also have what is called a diminishing deductible. So for every year you are with us and you are claims free, you get 10% off your deductible for a maximum of 50%. So if you're with us 5 years and you've been claim free, you get 50% off your deductible. If you're with us 1 year and you haven't had a claim, you get 10% and so on.
Good luck with the 5 years.
So let's bring this all together and let me show you how this works. So we're just going to start a deductible at $5,000, right? If you use our agreement, or if you report it early as a pre-claim, you get automatically 50% off your deductible. That brings your deductible down to $2,500. If you've been with us for 5 years, and I'm just using these examples for easy math, you've been with us for 5 years and you have no claims, you get an additional 50% off that $2,500, which brings it down to $1,250. Again, if you use our agreement and it's signed before the inspection and you get a claim, you get an additional $1,000 off your deductible. So your out of pocket at that point is $250. That's our incentive for you guys to use our agreements. We are that confident in our agreements that we are offering this. Our agreements work, and we can send you the state agreements. They're free. I don't know that we have all the states done, but we do have Virginia's done, I believe. So I can send that to everybody. Look it over. It's your choice. You don't have to use it. And if you don't use it, that's fine. You can, if you're with us, you would still get the 50% off for reporting it early, and you'd get the 10% for every year you've been with us and been claims free. You just wouldn't get the $1,000 off. So we went through this faster than I thought we were. Here's my contact information. Do we have any questions?
Yes. Say, for instance, someone had been with an insurance company for 15 years, have not had one claim against him. Do you take that in consideration if someone's willing to come over to the other side, you might say?
That is a good question. In my experience, it hasn't worked, but we can always look at it. But typically, you've got to be with us for consecutive years.
And it doesn't count if you've been a good client with another company for 15 years and paid on time and never had a claim.
Not my experience, but it's always worth, I can ask the question. I'm pretty sure they're going to tell me no, but I can always ask that question.
Or go back to your current accountant. Say, I've been a good client, and unless you knock down my rate, given my 15-year history, I'm leaving.
Blackmail always works.
Absolutely. It's all negotiation.
There might be something embedded in your policy that you may not know about, and they may have something like a diminishing deductible. I know some competitors of ours have that as well. So I encourage you to read your policy and see exactly what's in there.
I definitely will.
So I have a question. Is it possible, or have you seen inspectors with agreements that are too long?
Not too long. No, we fight a lot with they're short, and they're, in my opinion, crap. So
the reason I'm asking is, like, let's say you have somebody has an 8-page agreement in mouse type.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if an attorney could say, this is so difficult to understand. My client didn't understand what they were signing, even though they have their signature on it.
Sure.
I didn't know.
And again, if it's 8 pages long, more power to you. If your agreement's 8 pages long, as long as it's got those important clauses and you make it clear and it's unambiguous and it's understandable, they see those clauses. I don't care if it's 8 pages or if it's 5 pages or if it's 20 pages, as long as it's got those clauses in there and they're clear. I don't think an attorney can say, hey, my client didn't see these or they weren't there. Now, if you've got an 8-page agreement and it all looks the same and there's no bolding, there's no italics, there's no capitalization, things like that, you may run into the problem where a lawyer could potentially say, hey, they didn't see this, even though you have a signature.
I know others may have some questions, but I just have one more. No, regarding the agreement, which is essentially separate from the inspection report itself. I know I've seen a number of reports where there's a lot of disclaimer language, in big sections in the report itself. Do they serve to any additional purpose, since they're already has disclaimer language in the, or other types of, protective language for the home inspector in the agreement.
You can have them in both places. It's not going to hurt or help in any, it'll help to have it in both places, but the main thing I'm concerned about is having it in that agreement. It's got to be in there. If you want to reiterate it in your report, more power to you. Absolutely do that.
But you don't necessarily use the report component as something to argue a case, I guess.
The report component, we wouldn't use those clauses because if they're in there, because at that point they're in the inspection report and we don't know when they sign the inspection agreement, right?
Okay.
So our first line of defense will always be that agreement. Now your report comes into play with the pictures and things you write in your report.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Quick question.
Sure.
If we're using your report, is it done through a system that you guys provide, or is it basically a document that we will be able to upload to our software? Because like when I set up a appointment, I send the document with it. So is it just like, here's our document, just save it and load it into your software?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, we do have a few more minutes here. Anybody have any questions that you'd like to pose?
Ask away.
Or any experiences that you've had with claims that you've filed and how they were resolved or not? I don't want you to embarrass yourself, but it's always helpful to share these types of stories. Lee or Powell? I'm not sure if you go by Lee or Powell. So
I have a question.
Sure.
Why has our agreements got to the point where you almost got to be a Philadelphia lawyer to do anything? The first agreement I had was very short, 1 page, and now my agreement is 3 pages.
Sure. It's again, it goes back to those clauses, and we found in our experience, if there's not certain things in the agreement, it can really backfire on the inspector and it won't go your way. What's in your contract is risk management for you. It's your first line of defense. It's a CYA. It's you want your contract to be as strong as you possibly can. If that means it has to be 5 pages to include everything, it's 5 pages. And it's unfortunate that the world we live in right now, everybody's so happy and we've got to, add all these things to the agreements. But at this point, it kind of just is what it is. And unfortunately, we've got to have these clauses because there's been precedent. There's been times where, inspectors don't have these clauses and they get, it hurts. It hurts these inspectors.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Smith, you had your hand up earlier.
Yes, thank you. Brianne, thank you for your input and your insight. It's just been so very helpful. I definitely have a little homework to do over the weekend. But just kind of something that I've had good experience with when you said, give that opportunity for your client to ask questions is as a service that it's a free service, is that for first-time home buyers, I offer a free 30-minute consultation on the report so that they can ask any questions that they might have. Is just hearing that, is there like any sort of like gut feeling of saying, hey, you should add a fee to that? Or is it just good customer service? What's your opinion?
So we have a lot of inspectors right now, especially with the way the market is, where homeowners are maybe not having a full home inspection and they just want like a consultation essentially to look at the big things. We do have a specific agreement that is for those types. It's up to you whether you want to charge a fee or not. Most people, in fact, I know every single one of the inspectors that I know that do this charge a fee for it. And just get that agreement signed prior. In that agreement, it states that you're not going to issue a written report. It's all going to be verbal. It's going to take, I don't know, however long some take 30 minutes, some will do 45. But whatever that time slot is that you've allowed to do that consultation, that's what it's there for. Just get that agreement signed because that's a condition of the policy.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I do not offer the consultation without delivering a written report. They have to have that in hand.
Okay.
So you're offering a home inspection.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. And again, thank you for your time. I appreciate your insight on this subject. Thank you.
No problem.
I would just like to make one thing, and this goes back to what we talked about with Rob and Tricia regarding the walk and talks. Just to encourage, there are some pockets in Virginia that these are still going on. The market demands it. Certainly the Northern Virginia area is one of those, and possibly areas in Virginia Beach, and you will know other places. But in these things, I just wanted to mention that you definitely want to have a separate agreement outside of the home inspection agreement that you use, and also to to specify in big bold words, among other liability protection language, that you are not offering a home inspection. This is not a home inspection, and not to even refer to it, to be on the safe side, as using the word inspection in the agreement. And you just use the word like consultation or service or some other euphemism, but don't use the word inspection, just again to give a little bit of separation from a home inspection and a consultation. So just a thought. And I even tell clients that I work with in offering these, that I said, this is an agreement. It is strictly one-sided to protect me. There's nothing to your benefit. I'm just straight up with it because I said, I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I've never had anybody question it. I've not had any problems, and I've been raising my fees. I know some people feel like, this is a way that the realtors are going to be going back to this, but, I think the market will demand what it demands in terms of having the, a full inspection report that can be used as even a negotiating tool in an agreement. But we're still a little bit in that area where the demand is greater than the supply.
And let me just reiterate again, you're not offering a full home inspection when you're doing these walk and talks. It is a consultation. I have a walk and talk agreement. If you want to see it and want to use it, you may do so. Just shoot me an email and I can get that over to you. And we refer to it as a consultation.
James, your hand is up.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Really, really good presentation. It's occurring to me that when we're talking about these walk and talks, which I am in the Charlottesville area, there are a few of those that happen here, but nothing like Northern Virginia. But what occurs to me is there is a tremendous amount of liability in from the side of the seller. When we're doing a home inspection, that is the result of a contingency built into the purchase agreement, then we essentially have permission from the seller to be in that house and inspect that house at that time on that date. These walk and talks, you are opening yourself up to a lot of liability from the seller's side because you may not have permission to do what you're doing. Just a comment.
That hasn't been our experience. At least our consultation agreement has an exclusion or a clause in there that says, I believe it says that the inspector claims no liability for this, and it's strictly an opinion. There's no liability on the part of the inspector. I have yet to see where a homeowner has come after an inspector for doing a walk and talk inspection. I have yet to see that. And I know inspectors that have been doing this for 5 years. There's really not a whole lot of risk in that, as long as your agreement is solid. And it's a 1-page pre-consultation agreement. I'm happy to send that if you want it.
Thank you.
All right, Edward.
I just wanted to know, because I've done a couple of these. I don't inspect a whole lot, but when I do, some of the more recent ones have just been for informational purposes only. The house is already purchased. Basically, at this point, the purchasing of the home is not contingent on the home inspection. I mean, I don't normally put it in the inspection report. Just make him still sign a pre-inspection, but I've been putting it in notes on my inspection, the actual report, that this is an informational report only, because they already own the house. There isn't anything. So do you recommend continuing to do that? Does it matter? Because in my mind, it's like, well, you already own this house. All I'm doing is telling you about the thing you already own. There's nothing there's, I mean, in my mind, I tell them up front, like, I'm going to do the same job regardless, but there really isn't anything for you to balk at. This is your home. I'm just telling you what I see at this point, because there is no way out of it.
Yep. So we call those typically pre-listing inspections. A lot of times you'll run into that if a homeowner is wanting to put their house on the market and they want to know, the big things that may need to be fixed, or that may come up during an inspection. They want to be made aware of it, so they can either choose to make those repairs before listing it, or maybe drop the price of their house down to cover that. Again, it's a one-page, it's typically not a very long inspection. We call it a consultation. It's a pre-listing consultation. This would work in the same scenario as someone has just bought the house, maybe didn't get the home inspection, doesn't want a full home inspection, just wants you to hit the main points. You could use this as well. Again, it just says, hey, this isn't a full home inspection. These are the things I'm going to inspect and typically, or I'm going to look at. Typically it's the main systems, the HVAC, maybe you may test water temperature, big things that could, that could potentially cause problems, and you don't get into the nitty-gritty like you would in a full home inspection. Again, I do have a separate contract for that as well.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, thank you very much, Brianne. Before you just give a little overview again of Inspector Pro, I think we've got a good handle on everything, but you're in as a sponsor, and we appreciate all the insights that you brought with your presentation.
So again, I know a lot of you probably already have insurance, whether you're with us or another company. Great. Inspector Pro is a little bit different. Again, we are the biggest provider in the nation. We have the most inspectors across the nation. We do have our pre-claims assistance program, which we discussed pretty in depth earlier in the presentation. We've had a lot of success with it. So if you're interested, you just want to see a quote, please contact me. My contact information is on the screen. Even if you're not insured with me, use me as a resource. If you have questions, whatever it may be, you can call me. I'm happy to give you opinions and give you advice, things like that. Use me as a resource. That's about all I have, guys.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time to put this together, and it's very informative.
Thank you.